really small budget, everyday items that you can get at Home Depot to make a great robot. And one thing we learned in our extensive research for this project is that if there's two things people love, it's simplistic slides and pictures of ducks. So, here we go. One of the things that we use a lot on our robot is just basic, super thin sheet metal. And we like this because it's super easy to manipulate. You can use it with just a basic bandsaw like we have. And you can drill through it and just use it for anything that you need on your robot that the rev parts won't be able to fulfill. So we just use all sorts of different types. You see here we need a really specific shape, and you can really easily get that on sheet metal. And another great thing about it is that you can just, like this, you use a vise and a hammer, and you can just bend it. So you can, if you're creative, you don't need to go out and buy an L bracket. You can just make your own with some of this junk.
Yeah. So here's when we actually put our sheet metal to use. We have this clamp right here. During last year's competition, this was to pick up the wobble goal and score it. So that's just two pieces of sheet metal clamped together in a curve to use to pick up that.
It's great to bend around, so you don't need to go make or buy a specific part to do something. You just bend the metal into any shape you need.
Yeah, we use sheet metal and everything instead of like 3D printed parts. Since we don't have a 3D printer, we use sheet metal since it's easy to move around and shape. So that's another cheap option. And so another cheap option is wood. We use wood a lot on our robots. Our first year, our robot was completely made out of wood, except for the battery and brains. So
This is last year's robot. You can see it's it looks like it would do really badly, but we actually did pretty well. It just looks like that because we used wood, which is it's cheap, it's really easy to cut, and you can just make anything you need out of it. And not a lot of teams use wood, but we don't really see the reason for that because it's just great to use.
yeah, we use it in like testing designs and everything, so we don't have to use super expensive parts and then have to take it apart. We can just use something that's easy to take apart, put back together, and use again.
This is last year we made this. We realized we had an odometer sticking on the bottom of our robot that if it was, when the robot was being set down, if it was being moved, it would cause a problem. So we realized that and we just quickly made this wooden base for it to hold that odometer off the ground. And it's just super quick and easy to make things out of wood like this, but we don't see a lot of teams doing that. This is a mechanism we used last year. It was used with Velcro because we couldn't use a gear in this scenario because we needed this plastic piece right here to move in and out and push the rings into our flywheel to shoot them. But if there was teeth here, then it would have gotten caught on the rings. So we decided to use Velcro for that. And you don't see people using Velcro very much, but it's cheap and simple to use.
It's actually, the wheel was too small, so we used another everyday item, duct tape. So we wrapped a lot of duct tape around it to make it wider and then to fit the size that we wanted it to.
And then this is how you can see that wheel implemented. It's right here, this plastic piece with the Velcro wheel. This would spin. This plastic piece would go in here. There's a little hopper in here that held all three of our rings. And then push them into this thing and get shot out by a wheel that's hidden. And you can also see our use of Velcro right here because we had some screws sticking out, and when we rubbed against the back wall, it would cause problems and scrape the wall and damage the robot. So we just use this as a little buffer.
Yeah. And then another thing we use is PVC pipe. We've used that that was one of the big fundamental parts of our sweeper and intake for our last year's robot. So, see, PVC pipe is pretty easy, very easy to drill holes in. So we drew tons of holes in this and then put surgical tubing to make those go.
Yeah, to make little sweepers to sweep up the rings into our intake. And you can see we had 3 of them here.
Yeah.
That all went up into there where they would be pushed out and shot. So it's just cheap little sections of surgical tubing drilled in, and then that little red bit is a little bit of plastic to give them some more firmness so they could actually sweep up the ring.
So we connected the screws, we drilled the screws into the little smaller red surgical tubing. So we drilled that into the PVC pipe to stick it in there, and then we put the bigger surgical tubing on top of it, and just the friction is holding it together so they can actually come off.
And then this is just a little, it was actually AC duct metal, and we found that little curved piece and we just bent it out because we needed a curved thing, because you can't really see it, but right here there's a flywheel. So the things would get pushed in and they'd hit the flywheel and they'd go out, and we needed a thing that would perfectly follow that curve. So we got this AC duct, we cut it open and we cut it to size, and we just bent it to exactly the right curvature that we needed to send the rings flying out the way that we needed it to.
So that's just another way that you can use just anything you have as anything.
This is a drawer opening mechanism with all these bearings in here, and there's no reason to spend a lot of time making something like this when you can just use something that's used for drawers. Just have something that can extend out by itself.
Yeah, so this is just found in your drawers, like in your house. So we took apart one of these, and then we use it as an extension on our robot.
And then this is one of our favorite things, is that we needed, this year and last year we used the same one. We needed a counterweight because our robot, if you look over there, there's a lot of stuff going on near the top, and it has a really thin base, so it tended to tip over a lot, so we needed a counterweight. And we didn't have much just like metal sitting around, so what we did was we took the little cardboard box and we filled it up with screws and nuts and bolts, and we covered it in wrapping paper and duct taped it and zip tied it to the bottom of our robot, and it keeps it nice and secure. So we have 2 of those on our robot actually in there.
So
It's just a box of screws.
Yeah, it's little solutions like that, like a box filled with screws that just are cheap ways to fix the problem.
And then this is for this year's capping mechanic of the game, this is how we did that. Down here you have a little magnet, and this is just a free paint stick that you can get from Lowe's. And we have a little hinge down here so it can rotate freely. You have the magnet on the end, and then that attached to these are caps, and they just stick right on.
Here, and then
Get on the thing, and it just pops right off without needing another mechanism on the end. Magnet, really cheap, and then a free paint stick. So, yeah, and then on this cup, the way we made it magnetic is we took 2 cups, we took 1 cup and glued screws and bolts and nails all around the inside, which are magnetic. So we did that and then put another cup in there and glued it on, and now it's a magnetic cup. So it's just a cheap way to do that without needing to buy extra metal. So, yeah.
And then there's the duck on it also, which was a way of recognizing the capstone. And so that was just another really cheap way.
Because we already had a machine learning thing to recognize when a duck was there. So we thought, why spend time making another thing when we can just put a picture of a duck on it and it'll recognize it just as well. So that's about it. And does anyone have any questions?
And then also, if you look to our robot, you can bring, do you want to bring it over there? So you guys can look around it and see all the funny
All the little shortcuts.
made parts.
comment to last season. I heard some like criticizing, probably biased criticizing in the judging panel. Like, so they're basically saying because those private school kids they have money, so they can throw a better robot there. So I totally disagree. A better example is like CDA Lions. They are private school, but their idea is trying to find a solution in an affordable way, and it's pretty like much environment friendly. So I really appreciate that.
So with all these genius cost saving ideas, how much total you spend on this one?
I can't say how much.
Less than 1,000 or still a little bit higher?
2,100 in total.
Yeah.
No, you still have you still have to buy it in total.
1,700 in total was our spending, and
17.
that actually included entering all the competitions.
Yeah, we have
Coach pays me.
We like
He knows best.
we have like no money, so.
we have a very small budget.
Anybody need to sponsor us?
Almost every single part on that robot is reused from
Do
either
you want to
last
leave right
year.
now, or do you want to leave
So
in the
we
middle?
take
That's
apart
not four.
all our robots from
I want
every
to
year,
text him
so we
again.
can reuse all the parts, so we don't have to buy new. So we just keep saving money because we have a really
Ooh,
limited
that's
budget.
really cool.
Good job.
You can leave in the middle.